Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV.
Welcome back to HFO-TV. I'm Lee Fehrenbacher. I'm here with Dory VanBockel, the program coordinator for the Inclusionary Housing Program at the City of Portland. And welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here today.
Dory, can you start by just kind of telling us what inclusionary housing is and what is the Inclusionary Housing Program?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of February 1st of this year, all buildings in the City of Portland with 20 or more units need to meet the requirements of to provide affordable housing in accordance with the new zoning code.
Okay. So the state passed that, the bill 1533 for that in March. And can you tell us what the process was for us getting to where we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the city commissioner in charge of housing at the time, Dan Saltzman, put together a panel of experts with a number of folks within the community, developers and others with stakeholders interested in the program, as well as the city contracted with a couple of consultants, David Rosen and Associates, as well as Echo Northwest locally, to put together a whole study of what it would mean to have an inclusionary housing program in Portland, what impact that would have on developments. And they looked at over 50-some scenarios of potential projects across the city, and with input from this panel of experts kind of had some understanding of the terms that were used for this calibration study in order to put together some recommendations to the commissioner to then put forward with the program. So there were a series of meetings that were held. The public was able to see this process in action and ask questions about what went down. And as it went forward, as of September of last year, the Commissioner Saltzman made the first sort of draft recommendation of what a program would look like. And then there were a series of public hearings, including through the Planning and Sustainability Commission, and then ultimately at City Council, as well as a council work session they held. So through all those reviews, ultimately there was changes to 3 portions of the city code. So first the zoning code, Title 33, and then there was a new chapter that went into the Affordable Housing Code, Title 30, so for the Affordable Housing Inclusionary Housing Program. And then they also made some adjustments to the multiple unit limited tax exemption program in order for it to work in conjunction with the Inclusionary Housing Program.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know that was a very long process and a lot of stakeholders kind of providing their feedback. It must have been very difficult to kind of hone in the program that we have today, I would imagine. Yeah,
I mean, ultimately there were a lot of policies made and developed and a lot of different interests involved. And so, there was some outcomes, and now we have a program that's in place as of February 1st. And, recognizing that it may not be a perfect program yet, but there'll be changes we can make to it and adjustments to make it work as well as possible and still get the outcomes that we want with the program.
Yeah, and that's, you kind of lead into a question I had for you guys is how often will the city be reviewing the program and monitoring how it's working or in ways that maybe it's not working?
Yeah, the City Council requested that at least at the 3-year mark we look back at what the outcomes have been with the program, what the results have been. I mean, we'll be making updates of whether it's just the data, the sort of the progress, what we're seeing much more regularly than that, and looking at things to see if we need to kind of recalibrate that whole balance of what we'll talk about as far as the requirements and the incentives, as well as what is the effect that it has had on the market. And so there's definitely some intention to be able to respond to that, but not in a way that also would prevent the program from being predictable, so that people can make decisions in the market based on what the program is.
Yeah, that's great. I know that was one of the concerns for developers specifically, was just having the predictability of knowing what the rules were going to be going forward, regardless of what the rules actually were.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, some of the more fine-tuned pieces of the program, if we need to adjust one thing just to to clarify, something in the code, a sentence here, a sentence there. That's something we can, pretty easily do. But we're also recognizing that we want to do that through a process with the public. So anytime that we're making an update like that, we will still, allow for input along the way and make sure that we, get it as right as possible.
So how can a developer meet the inclusionary housing program requirements?
So at the core of the program, there's 3 ways that a developer could meet the program requirements. So, essentially they can provide the affordable units in the new building, and there's a number of options that they could do that even within that. They can also opt to not do any affordable units in the new building or additional units that they're adding to a building, and instead designate units to be within a building elsewhere.
Okay.
Either another new building that's getting built, it could be one they're building themselves, or even partnering with someone else who has a building going up, or they could designate units within an existing building. So there's a number of different ways that those could be done. And so depending on all of those different circumstances, we can, work with them to, make that happen and meet the program requirements. The third thing is the option of just paying a fee in lieu, so based on the square footage of the building, and not have any requirements at all.
Yeah.
And then the funds generated from that would go into an affordable housing fund that then the city can use to provide affordability in other ways, either through the general gap financing that the city does on a regular basis, or through direct construction of affordable housing ourselves. A lot of different ways we could use that.
Okay. Is there a liaison or someone, an office specifically, such as yourself, that can help developers kind of navigate what is the best option for them and the project they're considering doing?
Yes, absolutely. So we have staff who are now at the Permitting Center in the Bureau of Development Services. So they're available all the open hours for people to have walk-in questions, just like a lot of other city bureaus are represented there. And also we have a hotline set up, a message line that we can return calls within a couple days. We've got an email, inclusionary-housing at portlandoregon.gov. And we are also going to have housing staff now involved in pre-application, early assistance, and land use review meetings. So we'll be part of that assistance that the city offers to help explain the program, how it applies to a project, what the different options and incentives are, and what it will mean for a specific site.
Okay, so just kind of like an added layer of information and expertise on an ongoing basis for kind of every step of the permitting process. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about what it is. What are the benefits that developers will receive for participating in the program?
In order to participate in the program, it applies to both rental projects as well as if a project were to be built for a homeownership condominium process. So it would vary a little bit. The incentives are going to be the same, but obviously the requirements long-term are going to be a little bit different. There's a 99-year affordability period. If the option of choosing to provide affordability is chosen, the fee in lieu option then doesn't require any further steps. But the fee in lieu option would allow a development to receive a density or FAR bonus still. Aside from that, so by providing the affordable units directly, there's a number of options that would be available, or incentives to help offset the affordability, and it's going to vary depending on the zoning of the project, the location within any specific plan districts, and the level of affordability chosen. So, and all of that was determined in that calibration study that was done for the ramp up of the program, is how those were all weighed out. So the multiple unit limited tax exemption will apply to any project with affordable units depending on those factors. It may or may not be all of the project, or it could just be for the affordable units.
Generally kind of based on location and the amount of density.
Yeah, and more specifically, within the central city plan district, the multi will apply to all of the affordable units, and then outside of this, unless the project has less than a 5-to-1 FAR.
Right.
So outside of the central city, they'll be able to still get the tax exemption for 10 years, but only for the affordable units.
And is that something that the city will be monitoring? We talked about kind of ongoing review, the difference between development in the core central city, development in suburban tertiary markets, and kind of how those, propensity of projects happening in suburbs compared to in the core. Is that one of the things you guys will be reviewing?
Absolutely, all of the above. We'll also be measuring the use of the tax exemption program against the cap that's annually in place for the program, and that was part of the calibration as well, as making sure that we were comfortable with being able to meet the cap, and also tracking sufficiently that if we were getting close to not being able to meet that we'd be able to respond in a way to still not make that be a hindrance to the program.
Okay.
So as far as some of the other exemption or incentives actually that are available still and provided along with the inclusionary housing, there's for projects that provide the lower affordability rates, there's an SDC exemption available on those units.
And by lower rates, you mean the median family income, so it's like
yes,
60% of median family income versus 80%.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah, so those then would be able to use the existing SDC or System Development Charge Exemption Program.
Okay.
And the same thing would apply then for any of the units that they could get exemption from the construction excise tax for the affordable ones, so regardless of whether it's at 60% or 80% of area median income. And again, depending on some certain criteria as to where a project's located and how close it is to transit or a MAX station, for instance, there's also the possibility for a project to receive an exemption from the parking requirements.
Okay.
And any of the projects with the inclusionary housing will also receive a density or FAR bonus that, again, will vary based on the location within the Central City Plan District or within Gateway Plan District or, the specific zoning for the site.
How will inclusionary housing change how developers apply for building permits, or will there be any change?
Yeah, it won't be a big change, with the exception that, as we talked about, there are now still staff from the Portland Housing Bureau that are part of the permitting process and will be reviewing all apartment permits going forward. And so applicants will need to choose up front when they're applying for a building permit for an apartment, what route they want to take. Do they want to do of those 3 different options?
Okay.
Do they want to provide the affordability, in the building? Do they want to, work with us further about determining an off-site option, or do they just straight want to buy out of it through the fee in lieu option? And then beyond that, depending on that option chosen, of course,
sure.
We'll see how much PHB needs to be involved in that process, but
okay.
We'll kind of, there is a regulatory agreement that we'd need to have recorded on the property, if the affordable housing is going to be part of the project.
Okay. I mean, kind of along those lines, and not only applying for the permit, but how do developers figure out how the program will specifically impact the plans that they had in place, or the plans that they want to bring to you guys? How do they go about figuring that out?
So if they want to talk to us, before actually submitting a building permit, like in those ways I described earlier, we can certainly look at a specific project and weigh out what those different options are and what effect it would have on the project.
Okay. So Dory, one question is, obviously before the February 1st deadline or implementation of the program, we saw a lot of permits being submitted to try to get vested before the inclusionary housing went into play. And then since then, we've seen a little bit of a fall off on new projects applying for permits, and those that have typically been less than 20 units. How are you guys going to monitor that going forward? I know we talked a little bit earlier about the review process, but on an ongoing basis, over the next 6 months to a year, what can we expect?
The city is definitely looking at the number of permits that are in the queue. They're busy at BDS, working through everyone who got vested prior. There's a lot of questions. There have actually been a few inquiries about whether or not, with the different incentives provided with the inclusionary housing program, whether they might, some projects might benefit more by choosing the inclusionary housing program. We know for sure by attending some of the pre-application meetings, for instance, that there are going to be some developments coming down the river, and it's just a matter of seeing how quickly the market will adjust to the new requirements, and how folks respond as these the units that did get in the permitting prior to the new zoning continue to get built out, and what effect that has on the market on its own.
It'll be an interesting kind of time will tell, I guess, situation. And as you said, the opportunity for reviewing and revamping the program on an ongoing basis so that, it's, working as best it can. And I mean, your experience with the multi-program, you've worked on that for a number of years. I think you guys had some really good success stories with that program. Am I right?
Yeah, we were able to, take a lot of the goals and outcomes that we wanted to see with the program, and over a number of years, really fine-tune those policy goals to make them more workable for the development community, and still, then get the units built, which is what we want to, and still be able to have a program that was beneficial and workable for folks to actually embrace and use in the community.
Wonderful. Well, Dory, thank you for coming in. Really appreciate your time. Again, I'm Lee Fehrenbacher with HFO-TV. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.